Hi everyone, thanks for joining me again in my mental health series, and thank you so much for all of the support for my last video on anxiety. I really appreciate all of your support and for coming back to see what else I have to say. This week I'm going to be talking about depression, which is obviously a really difficult conversation to have, and I just think that it's not talked about enough. I know a lot of people that I know personally, family, friends of friends, have all experienced kind of series of depression, series of depressive episodes. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about it and to break down some of the stigma and some of the myths that you may know about depression, as well as answering some of your questions and talking a little bit about my own experience of depression as well. My experience of depression has been kind of on and off over a number of years. Obviously I suffer from anxiety, and that's something that kind of goes hand in hand with depression, but almost in a kind of opposite way. So my depression and my depressive episodes, I always have this voice in my head kind of telling me not to go out, not to see people, nobody cares about you, and all of those things, which is kind of a similar voice to my anxiety. But my anxiety also tells me to absolutely go out, because if I don't go out then people are going to talk about me or things like that. So it's kind of a similar message, but almost a battling voice inside my head. I've experienced weeks on end where I've kind of not really wanted to go out, not being able to go to see my friends or family, just purely because I physically can't get out of bed or I can't leave the house, and I've cancelled plans. And a lot of my friends will know this, that I have, you know, cancelled a lot of things with them, and it's purely because I'm not in the right mind frame, or, you know, I'm experiencing a severe kind of bout of depression. I think the thing with depression for me is that it's the most lonely of all of the mental health experiences that I've had. So it kind of leaves you feeling like there's nobody there for you, and nobody understands your problems, or nobody cares about you, and it can be incredibly lonely, especially when, you know, like I said, I've spent weeks on end kind of not leaving my house. So it can be incredibly lonely, and I think that's something that people often forget about. Depression kind of almost forces you to withdraw, it forces you to not go out, it forces you to avoid spending time with people, speaking to people, being open, and it's such a dangerous place to be. It can lead to very high level deep emotional sadness and awful negative feelings about yourself, about your family, friends, things like that. It can be permanently damaging and even fatal. So a lot of depression can, if left on its own, lead to things like self-harm, or even to lead to suicide in some cases, which is obviously incredibly sad. And that's why I think that we need to open the conversation about it a little bit more. Obviously it can lead to very deep sadness and real upset and hurt and angst, but it's not just necessarily you know, being a little bit sad because, you know, you can't see your friends, or being a little bit sad because something a little bit sad has happened, or you know, you've had a bit of a bad day. That's not what it is. It's much deeper than that. And one of the best metaphors I've ever heard, and a lot of people have probably heard it as well, is around the black dog. So this is a kind of metaphor to explain what depression is. So it's almost like you have this black dog following you around all the time, and it's kind of weighing on you, and you just don't know when it's going to come out as well. So that's one of the metaphors that I've heard talked about a lot, which is actually a really good way to describe what depression feels like. So if you're interested, just literally have a little quick Google search of black dog, and there was a campaign a few years ago that kind of ran on the TV about what depression was, and that was the metaphor that they used. There's lots of different types of depression as well, so things like seasonal affliction disorder, which is kind of when you are depressed in different seasons more than you are in others. So, you know, when it's grey and cloudy outside, you're a lot more likely to experience depression than you are when it's sunny and nice and hot. There's also things like postpartum depression, which obviously a lot of people will have heard of now, and you know, there's so many different types. There's also situational depression, so that will come from, you know, sad experiences, trauma, grief, things like that. If you've experienced a close family member or a friend pass away, you may experience some depression as a result of this, but it's not necessarily the same as, say, somebody who has depression for other reasons, and which aren't triggered by a specific event. The next myth that I would like to debunk is around not having depression if you have everything in your life that should make you happy. If you'd look at the lives of people who have sadly died from suicide, or died from their depression, it's easy to see that having everything isn't necessarily going to make you happy. Having all the money in the world, having, you know, all the things, having a roof over your head, having a loving family isn't necessarily going to prevent you from feeling depression or being depressed. And we can see this from, you know, all of the awful stories that we read in the news or, you know, see on a regular basis. There's a huge amount of stigma around depression and people that have depression. So one of the things that the mental health community has been trying to do quite a lot more is to really think about the language that is used when talking about depression, suicide and self-harm. So you'll have noticed that when I said suicide, I didn't use the word committed. So in the mental health world nowadays, they try not to use the word committed suicide, because it just increases the stigma that is already on these people who are suffering very heavily from with their mental health. And again, I just have a couple of questions that have been sent to me about depression, so I'll just answer those. The first is, what tips do you have for somebody who is suffering from depression? Firstly, I would say make sure that you get the support that you need and the help that you need from wherever you find it comfortable. So whether that is with a GP because it's professional, or whether that's with friends and family and opening up to them a little bit more about what you're feeling and how that is impacting you in your life, or whether it's with a work colleague, or, you know, specifically with the HR department in your work, your company, basically anybody that you feel like you can open up to. As I mentioned when I was talking about anxiety and tips for anxiety, I also massively recommend using the resources that are available from specific charities that, you know, support mental health. So charities like CALM, which is the Campaign Against Living Miserably charity, has a dedicated service which you can contact. They have people kind of that are able to speak to you about what your journey might look like trying to get help, or how you can support yourself or others around you. And they also have just loads of resources online that can be really useful when you're feeling you know, down or depressed. Other charities include Depression UK, Mind, SANE, and I will link all of these in the description below so that you can kind of check them out yourself. Try to remember that you're not alone. Obviously, I know this can be the hardest thing in the world when you're in a depressive episode, but if you can remember this, and if you can kind of focus on the positives that you are, you know, that are in your life, then it will be really useful. The second question that I had was, how can I support a family or friend going through depression? The most important way that you can support somebody with depression is always try to get them involved. The likelihood is that they will probably say no to a lot of things. They will say no to meeting up, they'll say no to speaking to you, they'll say no to going to events, going to the pub, going to the park. Pretty much everything you can lay on the table, they will probably say no. But by asking them, you're putting that hand out there and that support, and it allows them to kind of think about those moments when they are going through a depressive episode. And by remaining open to those conversations, you're really allowing that person to come to you when they feel comfortable, and they'll know that you're always going to be there for them. Remind them of the resources that are available. So yes, they might not want to talk to you, they might not want to talk to anybody at all, but there are always things that they can do kind of online. And educate yourself on what it means to be depressed or to suffer from depression. And more importantly than anything, never ever downplay how they feel. Depression is a really serious illness, and by downplaying how they feel, by, you know, making a joke of it or saying it's just a phase or that it's just them being a bit down, will ultimately have a really negative effect on their journey through depression as well. So make sure you make it very clear to them how much you understand how serious it is, and support them as best you can. And finally, help them to get help. So if they are interested in getting support, or they're interested in going to see a GP or getting a therapist, or trialing a new medication, support them in that journey as much as you can. So offer to kind of go to see a GP with them, or just be there to be a guiding hand for them. It's not your job to kind of tell them everything that they need to know, but the best thing that you can do is support them through their journey and make sure that they know that you're always going to be there for them. So thank you so much for watching my video on depression. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe to this video and to my channel. And let me know if there's anything else you want me to talk about mental health, and I'll be doing a few more videos just like this. So I'll see you in the next one.